Welcome to Psychology 311, Study Session 8, Vision 4, Color Vision, Visual Perception, and Depth Perception. Introduction. Sensations that are transmitted to the brain have little meaning of their own. They are in the form of raw neural energy that must be organized and interpreted in the process we call perception. However, some aspects of perception are unique to members of different cultures. The specific learning experiences, memories, motives, and emotions of the individual also can influence perception. For example, we all perceive the stimuli of knife in pretty much the same way because of the inborn ways we organize visual information. But a knife also has unique perceptual meaning to each individual, depending on whether the person has been caught by similar knife. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to 1. Describe the visual perception and depth perception, and 2. Explain the mechanism of color vision. Pre-test. What is color vision? 2. Define visual perception. 3. What do you understand by perception? 4. Briefly explain visual and depth perception. Content. Color vision. Energy of any wavelength within the spectrum of visible light evokes a sensation of color when it stimulates the human visible system. Light energy is that energy which has no color of its own. Color is the conscious expectation experience that results from the processing of light energy by the eye and nervous system. It's obviously useful to be able to discriminate among lights of different wavelengths. It has taken psychologists and other scientists more than 100 years to reach the current understanding of the complex mechanisms of color. In the early 18th, Thomas Young and Hermann von Helmholtz made the observation that any color can be created by shining different combinations of the wavelengths of light for red, blue, and green on a single spot. For example, as the combination of red and green light produces yellow, based on this observation, Young and Helmholtz guessed that there are 3 kinds of cones in the retina that responds mostly to light in either the red, green, or blue range of wavelengths. Their theory is referred to as the trichromatic theory of color vision. According to this theory, all sensations of color results from different levels of stimulation of the red, green, and blue receptors. Over the years, studies have confirmed that there are indeed 3 kinds of cones. Each kind of cone contains pigments that mostly absorb light of the wavelengths that correspond to red, green, and blue receptors. After the trichromatic theory, other scientists pointed out that it could not explain 3 intriguing phenomena: complementary color, color after image, and partial color blindness. Hence, the opponent process theory to provide explanations. The opponent process theory is the theory of color vision contending that the visual system has two kinds of color processors which respond to light in either the red-green or yellow-blue ranges of wavelengths. Visual perception. Visual perception begins in the complex neural structures of the eye before sensory images are transmitted to the brain. Ochberg, 1988. The distinction between sensation and perception, then, is largely an arbitrary one, but it makes our discussion of information processing by the sense organs and brain easier to understand. The major ways in which sensory information is interpreted into meaningful perceptions, including both those that are common to us all and those that are unique to each individual, are discussed. Raw visual sensations are like the unassembled parts of a washing machine. They must be put together in an organized way before they are useful to us. Gestalt psychologists in their pioneering writings described some of the fundamental ways in which the eye and brain organize visual sensations on perceptions, though worthy of attention. Palmer, 2002. The following are the 5 Gestalt principles of perception. Figure ground. When we perceive a visual stimulus, part of what we see is the center of our attention. Figure and the rest is the indistinct ground. The principle of perception is very useful in showing us that what we perceive is often based more on what goes on in our brain than what is in front of our eyes. Continuity. We tend to perceive lines of patterns that follow a smooth contour as being part of a single unit. We do not naturally organize sensations in this way. However, we tend to perceive continuity in lines and patterns. Proximity. Things that are proximal, that is close together, are usually perceived as belonging together. Similarity. On this particular fundamental principle, similar things are perceived as being related. Closure. Incomplete figures of familiar things tend to be perceived as complex wholes. Again, we fill in missing sensory information to create complete and whole perceptions. Depth perception. The retina has a two-dimensional surface. It has an up and down, and a left and a right, but no depth. The eye and brain accomplish this remarkable feat by using a number of two-dimensional cues to create a perceptual distance. The 8 monocular cues are: texture gradient. The texture of objects is larger and more visible up, close and smaller when far away. On curved surfaces, the elements of texture are also more slanted when they are further away. Linear perspectives. Objects cast smaller images on the retina when they are more distant. As a result, parallel lines, such as railroad tracks, appear to grow closer together the farther away they are from us. In paintings, therefore, objects with larger relative size will appear to be closer than will objects with smaller relative size. Superposition. Closer objects tend to be partially in front of or partially cover up more distant objects. Shadowing. The shadows cast by objects suggest their depth, speed of movement. Objects further away appear to move across the field of vision more slowly than do closer objects. For example, a dog running through a distant field appears to move slowly, but it moves quickly when the dog runs right in front of us. Area perspective. Water vapor and pollution in the air scatter light waves, giving distant objects a bluish, hazel appearance compared with nearby objects. Accommodation. In accommodation, the shape of the lens of the eye must change to focus the visual image on the retina, form stimuli that are different distances from the eye. This process is called accommodation. Kinesthetic receptors in the ciliary muscle, therefore, provide a source of information about the distance of different objects. This information is useful, however, only for short distances up to about 4 feet. Vertical position. When objects are on the ground, the further they appear to be below the horizon, the closer they appear to be to us. For objects in the air, however, the further they appear to be above the horizon, the closer they appear to be to us. Summary. In this lecture, we have learned that color is the conscious expectation experience that results from the processing of light energy by the eye and nervous system. We also noted that it has taken psychologists and other scientists more than 100 years to reach the current understanding of the complex mechanisms of color. The contributions of Jung and Helmholtz to the trichromatic and opponent process theory of color vision were equally learned. The 5 Gestalt principles of perception and the 8 monocular cues of perception were also examined. This is the end of study session 8. Thanks for listening.